Congresso Abrage, e eu tenho alguns informes do dia aqui para vocês antes do começo da sessão oficialmente, ok? Vamos lá. Então, ponto 1, né, é o cuidado com os seus pertences, fique de olho neles o tempo todo, pois há quadrilhas especializadas em roubo de equipamentos em eventos, nem a organização, nem a ESPM se responsabiliza por isso. Ponto 2, a ESPM não possui guarda.
ESPM has no cloakroom, so if you bring suitcases or backpacks, you are responsible for them. We don't allow pets, except for guide dogs. If you want to have a snack during breaks, feel free to go to Urban and to the cafeteria. Urban is open from Thursday to Sunday. Mr. João's snack shop will be open Thursday and Friday for quick meals. Regarding lunch, we have agreements with 3 restaurants in surrounding streets. Participants of the Congress should show their badges in 3 restaurants where they will have discounts. The organizers also have organized for a happy hour nearby, and they will provide free hors d'oeuvre if you present the badge. We have more information on our website, congresso.abrage.org.br. During breaks, you can visit the booths of our sponsors where we have activities and we are also distributing gifts. There's the Abrage booth where you can become a member and also buy gifts. The full program of these 4 days can be accessed through the QR code at the back of your badge, and we also have the pillars in front of the turnstiles. You can connect to the Open ESPN Wi-Fi, and you can register as a guest. We also have information about Wi-Fi on posters. Kindly give back your simultaneous interpretation headsets. Just yesterday, 5 people forgot to give back their headsets, and we have 4 IDs, so folks, don't forget. Gabriel dos Anjos, Thais, Amanda Araújo, and Jessica, we have your IDs. Please look for the organizers to get your IDs back. And don't forget to give back the headsets after the session. Also, in terms of accessibility, this Congress aims at being very accessible, so we kindly ask all of you if you can self-describe at the beginning of your session before you begin speaking. So we kindly ask you to mention your physical characteristics so that you can be identified. The goal of self-description is to make this event more inclusive and accessible for people with different disabilities. So you can talk about the clothes you're wearing, your hairstyle, and by doing that, we are allowing the audience to identify moderators, speakers during the discussion panels. If you're going to ask questions as well, we're going to have 30 minutes for questions after the presentation, so please self-describe before you ask your questions, and I'm going to do this right now before we begin. My name is Lorena, but everyone calls me Lori. I am a non-binary person. I am a white person with brown hair, brown eyes. I wear several bracelets in my left arm and 1 bracelet in my right arm. I'm wearing blue trousers and a brown shirt. Today we are here with very special guests. One of them, I'm a fan, is the Abrage director, Sergio Spagnolo. And we are here for the panel ChatGPT and other IA tools, solutions or threats to journalism. Not to journalists, okay, to journalism. The goal today is to leave this room optimistic, and I really mean it. optimistic with the perspective of jobs, of new ideas, with thinking. And I would like to ask you that when I refer to my colleagues, I'm going to talk to them in English. So if you don't have your headsets, you can grab them outside, and then don't forget to give them back and get your IDs back. But when I refer to you at the audience, I'm going to be speaking Portuguese. I'm a fellow at the Mozilla Foundation, and I'm going to be the moderator of this panel. Today with us, we have Sergio Spagnolo. Spagnolo. Sergio is a director at Abrage and at Núcleo Jornalismo. He's a journalist, and he is also one of the directors of Abrage and of the Núcleo Jornalismo. And I really think you should subscribe to these outlets. Then we have Jonathan Soma. He's a programmer and project developer in the area of data journalism. He has worked for major outlets, such as ProPublica and the New York Times. He is also a director at the LED program at Columbia University in New York. And we also have with us Tshepo Tshabalala, and the interpreter apologizes if the pronunciation was not correct. He's a manager at Journalism AI, sponsored by Policies, a think tank from the London School of Economics, supported by Google News Initiative. So let's give them a round of applause before we begin.
Bom, pessoal, o nosso acordo aqui hoje é falar do
So today,
trabalho do jornalismo.
we are going to talk about the work of journalism and working with information in different areas of journalism,
Que maneira também a gente está tendo a inovação
and how innovation
essas novas possibilidades
is opening up new possibilities
desse trabalho.
for this ancient work.
Estamos vendo surgir nas próprias
In
das chamadas
descriptions or when there's a request for jobs, open positions, we see a change in that as well. Oftentimes, the name of the position says project manager, for instance. And we've had good examples of that in Brazil. Of course, this panel came up with the idea of talking about ChatGPT. I expect all of you to have heard about this tool, but it's a language model, essentially. There are other tools as well, with the goal of being part of this journey of innovation in the information realm. Well, what happened after ChatGPT came about? There was some controversy around the end of work itself, the work of people that work with communication and that generate content and produce news. There was also a very interesting debate about how this tool can become just another tool, like many others that are part of our everyday lives as professionals. So it will be transformative, but it will not be destructive. It will actually be added to a toolkit with already existing tools. There are also other questions about the ethics involved in the use of these tools that use databases, precisely because access to databases involves topics such as intellectual property. So, where are these databases coming from? Are they diverse? What are the sources of information that are used to train these language models? So in this conversation about technology and communication, we would like to discuss how journalists, programmers, whether that's because of their academic background, and maybe some of you are even self-taught. I've had a hybrid background myself, but I think that what's interesting in communication is precisely this hybrid possibilities that are ahead of us. And, you know, these questions regarding the use of AI, I hope that they will make us all think, you know, about how this new tool will be used together with many learnings. But oftentimes we didn't go through this training process in our graduate years. And if you come from different backgrounds in your master's or in your PhD, but in any case, regardless of what we find in academic environments, these tools are everywhere. And there are many possibilities of learning about them, tutorials, courses that are outside of universities. And we have more possibilities available right now. Of course, also, new job positions are becoming more diverse when it comes to the skills required from professionals in this area. So, you know, you are going to end up facing this at some point. When there is a new open position, some of these skills will end up being required. And this is a question that's bound, or that you are bound to ask yourselves. You know, what do I still have to learn, and how can I obtain this training? With these three professionals and researchers that we have here, we have an amazing opportunity to develop this conversation. First, I would like to address Sergio and ask you for some introductory remarks regarding your work as a director. Sergio is a very well-known person when it comes to the development of technologies and also to the daily life in a newsroom. You know, looking at technologies, looking at AI as a tool. Can you tell us a little bit about also the policies to use AI in the Núcleo Jornalismo? Thank you, Lori, for the introduction. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sergio Spagnolo. I am a director at Abrage. I am a white man. I am almost 2 meters high. I'm wearing black T-shirt, jeans, and my hair is wild today, so it looks messy. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. This AI is a topic I've been focusing very much on in the last few months. And when ChatGPT came about, I was already playing with the playground, OpenAI.com, its first version. And this is a tool I would like to play until I had to actually pay to use the tool. But I knew the tool, and it was great, but then it became a hit, the interface became more friendly, and everyone was like, wow, what is this about? Well, in time, we saw that it has some limitations, but it's interesting to see the open possibilities for the future, which it brings. I was just talking to my friend Victor from Mayo. He's sitting in the audience right now. And he said, you know, a journalism company who is not, at least not experimenting with new AI models, runs the risk of being outdated. It's, you know, we're going to use this tool for many things. It might not replace journalists 100%. I think that the person, you know, the journalist as a person, is going to have more tools and resources to do research, to cover stories, to question documents. We have ChatPDF, if I'm not mistaken. You can actually interview a PDF file, and the tool gives you answers about what's in the document. So there are many opportunities for us to explore. I made a comparison once, saying that ChatGPT was a tool like a hammer, and a colleague didn't like the comparison. He said, well, a hammer is a much simpler tool. But now I compare ChatGPT with a toolbox. It has many tools, many power tools, many electric tools, but it's still a tool. And we can explore, we can use it, and we can use it within acceptable limits. No one's going to use this, at least I hope, to go around producing fake news. Some people will do that, but as journalists and as outlets, as media outlets, we have to take advantage of this tool to improve our work. Regarding policies, our Núcleo was the first Brazilian outlet to publish a policy regarding the use of AI. We do use AI. We are developing some frameworks and some AI tools. We are developing them internally in partnership with other organizations. Aos Fatos, we have Journalism AI. I'm part of that organization, which is headed by Tshepo. And it's interesting to know how we will use these tools. And it's, it's a living tool. We can, it's going to be updated, but we need to show everyone how we are using that, so it's not done irresponsibly. We don't allow the AI to write all our texts or 100% of them. Whenever we use it to summarize a text, we say, this has been summarized by AI, and we then review and proofread the AI version. There was a tech website in the US. They just started publishing, whole texts produced by AI without warning the audience. Or maybe there was a very fine print, small print, with no human review. And then they had some problems, and they decided to have human reviewers. But in any case, I think this is a key tool for journalism. Regarding specific projects, well, we're still in the beginning. It started late last year, early this year, it was the actual boom. So, we're still at its early stages. Outside of interviewing documents and obvious stuff, how are we going to use these tools? Many people are thinking about this, developing projects. We and other organizations are doing that. We have Jonathan and Tshepo doing that as well. Many people thinking about how can journalists use this for their benefit. But I like what Lori said in the beginning. This is a roundtable so that we leave this room feeling optimistic, and less fearful of this, assumed threat that AI might mean to journalism. If it is used correctly, responsibly, and, in an accountable manner, it can be really valuable for us, even automating stuff we don't like to do. We have a small team, and I do a lot of repetitive work in my everyday work. I don't know, cutting down texts so that they fit. Maybe not now, but in the future, we might use AI to remove this load from our shoulders so that we can do other stuff, like investigating stories. So I think it's a nice start for this conversation, and I'm sure that Jonathan and Tshepo are going to go into deeper details. Thank you, Sergio. Então agora eu vou falar com o John um pouquinho sobre jornalismo investigativo, porque que eu anotei aqui, olhando para o seu trabalho, é que você tem um GitHub cheio de tutoriais, e acho que a gente tem muitos estudantes aqui na sala que, sem dúvida, vão gostar de saber como que a gente pode explorar essa automação.
And how you can identify which part of the process it's like, this is I'm going to automate. This is the part what I need to do, and this is my role as a journalist here. So this is a question to you, and obviously, like, information management, how AI can obviously advance and enrich a process, okay? And lastly, please tell a little bit about the work you have been doing at Columbia. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jonathan Soma. There are too many people named Jonathan, so pretty much everyone just calls me Soma. I'm a tall white man. I wear glasses. I have a remarkably bald head, even though I would love to have more hair. I'm jealous. I have a checkered shirt on and a few very visible and also adorable tattoos. So I have been teaching AI and machine learning for a long time, I would like to say, because I think that these are all wonderful tools for people to be able to learn, and no one cared. No one cared. They thought it's too technical, it's too much trouble, we don't want to get involved in this. And I would say, but you can do wonderful investigations. You can do all kinds of magic things that you wouldn't be able to do without these tools. And they say, I'm fine just doing normal journalism. I have whole websites where I break down articles and processes that people have used. And then ChatGPT showed up, and it was the best thing that ever happened to me, not just because ChatGPT is fun and it can write you poems or whatever, but also because it let people realize the power hiding inside of their computers beyond opening a spreadsheet and sorting a column or doing some filtering. And all of these tools that previously people were scared of, they now say, why don't you tell me a little bit about that? I'm a little interested in this now. So to me, it's a little bit like, if we use the tool analogy from before, you get ChatGPT, this hammer or this toolbox, and then eventually you start to upgrade, or you get like a fancy Japanese saw, or you start to expand outside of this one single tool. So for me personally, I have a different perspective than most people, I think, because I only do teaching. I produce maybe a little bit of journalism, but mostly I exist to raise data journalists from nothing to being wonderful programmers. And so as soon as ChatGPT came out, I said, students, you are here to learn to program, yes, but mostly you're here to do journalism. Maybe sometimes that involves writing some code, scraping a website, analyzing a data set. And if we can skip the part where you're trying to write code that doesn't work for 12 hours and then you see me the next day and you haven't slept and you're crying and you say, please fix my code for me. If instead you just say, ChatGPT, can you help me with this? And you can get an answer. Is this cheating? No, because does it matter if you can write the code yourself, as long as you know what's coming out on the other end is accurate, and you're able to do the actual journalism that you were put here to do. This is what everything boils down to. People are worried that my students are going to use ChatGPT or other tools to cheat when they're writing, their homework or their articles. The whole reason my students exist is to do journalism and to write and to program. And all of these things are only in service of doing the journalism. So if you are using these tools, it's great, not cheating, wonderful. So I myself, though, am the biggest fan, but also the #1 enemy of all of these AI tools. So as a technologist, I will spend a lot of time experimenting with them and digging into them a little bit deeper, I feel like, than most people that will actually be working in a newsroom. Because what do? I teach my students, and then I go and I play with these like toys. And so when people get very excited, or they start to get excited about AI, about GPT, I say, yes, it's very exciting, it's wonderful, it can do all of this stuff. And then they go a little bit further, and I say, no, 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 no. These tools are awful, they're terrible, they can't do anything. Please stop trying to replace all of these journalists with them. And so I think that the most important thing that you can do here is involve yourself as much as possible with these tools to understand the limitations. The biggest battle that is happening in journalism right now, internal to journalism, is the business side of journalism versus the journalism side of journalism. And so for all of these AI tools, there's the fear that they will replace journalists. We all know that you can't replace a journalist with an AI tool. But the people who are in charge of hiring and firing maybe believe that you can. And so if they believe that you can fire a journalist and then have a low quality product put out by AI, maybe they're okay with that. And so it is kind of our job as journalists to show them the limitations of these tools because they're too excited about it. They don't necessarily know what goes into all of the actual act of journalism. So everything you can do to engage with these tools instead of being scared of them and learn their limitations, it'll pay off in spades. So I personally have 2 big projects that are not journalism related, but one was in the New York Times the other day, and it was about using GPT to talk to Spotify to make playlists that were not boring. Because I will try to listen to punk songs or bands, and it'll play their first 5 songs, and there's always one that's boring. There's always one that's slow. And so I did this big investigation into it. It involves kind of the chatting with PDFs thing that you were talking about before, about how to kind of let GPT talk to Spotify and find out all the songs that I really want. Very silly project, absurd project, not related to journalism. And yet by doing that, I learned so much about the limitations of what these tools can do. I had another project about having ChatGPT teach me about Hungarian folk tales. I do not speak Hungarian. Folk tales are fun though, so why not? And again, it enabled me to push the boundaries of GPT through programming so that I could understand, what its limitations are and what it can and cannot do. So even though you think in journalism, I need to use GPT to translate articles or suggest headlines or anything like that, you learn so much from just playing with these tools that 1,000,000% I encourage you to go out and play with it as much as possible, have as much fun with it, explore as much, so that when people say, this tool is fantastic, you can say yes, but there are a few limitations to it.
Thank you, Jonathan, but I thought you were going to mention social gastronomy too. Oh.
Yeah, no, none of my, so I also do food lectures about food science, but the most I would do with that is if I have to do PowerPoint slides where I talk about, ice cream taking over the world or the way that bread is made, now I can go to Midjourney or DALL-E and say, please create a really good background for my PowerPoint.
Fantastic. No non-tried recipes from GPT.
So, I mean, the thing about recipes in GPT, recipes are the most important thing to think about when you're thinking about the limitations of GPT. Because if you ask it for a cookie recipe, a chocolate chip cookie recipe, it will give you a real recipe, a delightful recipe, the most average, wonderful recipe, but it won't give you anything creative. It won't give you a new perspective on chocolate chip cookies or baking. And that is the role of journalists, and that is the role of people with all of these tools, is adding the human element, because these tools are just built to give you the most boring, acceptable possible answer.
Not great cookies from ChatGPT. Lesson learned, okay? Thank you. All right, so next is our great colleague here, Tshepo. He's from Journalism AI at LSE. And we are actually very excited because we know that a recent report, it didn't came out yet, but we have already a few highlights. I'm going to talk a little bit with the audience. Que, pessoal, acaba de sair pelo menos parte da pesquisa que o Tshepo coordena, you coordinate, right? Então, ele coordena essa pesquisa sobre o uso de IA nas redações. Então, parte da pesquisa já foi divulgada ontem. Então, eu tenho aqui alguns dados, porque a gente teve nessa pesquisa, mais de 60 organizações aí respondendo essa pesquisa sobre como os usos de inteligência
in terms of the use of AI and how they use it in newsrooms, not only to create content. So we have cases of use from writing codes, enhancing headlines, optimizing SEO. Tshepo, você pode falar um pouquinho, obviamente, sobre o seu trabalho e determinar. Acho que essa mão de obra que você inseriu nessa pesquisa, sinalizar talvez alguns pontos, porque eu tenho muitos aqui, mas eu acho que alguns que você acha que...
Some provocation for our late discussion.
Awesome. Thanks, Laurie. Hi, everybody. Tshepo here. I'm a black man, light-skinned. I'm wearing high tops, gray chinos, a baby blue shirt, and a dark blue jacket. And I've got spiky hair. Sorry, Jonathan. But I'm also balding somewhere here, so it started. Cool. So at Journalism AI, we do two things. We do research, which Laurie has mentioned, and we do training. And the trainings that we do stem from the first report that we did back in 2019 that sort of guided us into what we should be doing at Journalism AI when it was started. And so our program is focused on developing AI literacy within journalists and newsrooms across the world. And so we focus on learners, doers, and experts. And so for the learners, we have a course called Discovery. It's a 6-week newsletter course where you sign up and you receive a newsletter every week with links, videos, etc., and you go through the material yourself. We also have a global Slack classroom where you can participate, ask questions. We've got the course creator, Brandon Roberts, in there as well, who's able to answer all the technical questions for everybody. So that's for the learners. So that's a new program we started this year, and we're running the current program right now, and we're hoping that we can run iterations of those programs in Spanish and Portuguese in the new year. So that's the first one, learners. And then we've got a program called the Academy for Small Newsrooms, and that focuses on working with newsrooms, small newsrooms that are wanting to learn about AI and implement AI in the newsrooms. And so we have 3 cohorts, EMEA, APAC, and Americas. And currently we're running a program for EMEA and APAC, and essentially it's an 8-week program, and they have lectures and workshops, and we teach them how they can implement and use AI in the newsrooms. So that's, for me, that's the most exciting program we have, because I've worked previously with small newsrooms, and for me, it's seeing them grow and seeing them adopt technologies in different ways. Or just to add to that, and so we're currently working with the Open Society Foundation to do a special program where they will be focusing on generative AI. And so I'll try to tweet the link later, but if you can apply for it, do apply for it. It closes today, and they're going to do a generative AI sort of hackathon of sorts at the end, but we'll also do a smaller version of the academy with them. And then we have the fellowship, which Sergio is part of this year. For the fellowship, it focuses on the experts. It focuses on the newsrooms that are already using AI, and essentially the idea behind it is for them to collaborate with other newsrooms to come up with a new AI solution or tool that can be implemented in their respective newsrooms or other newsrooms. And I'll allow Sergio to maybe share their idea that they have on the program. And so that's the training that we do. Obviously, as we grow, we're only 5 years old, I think. And so as we grow, we'll do additional programs to make sure that we advance AI literacy across newsrooms, small, big, and across the world as well. And so that's the training. And then the research, which sort of directs the work that we do. And so this year, for the first time, we are updating that report that was done first in 2019. And so the final report, actually, Laurie, comes out in September. And so this was just a preliminary sharing of our findings, just to give people a taste of what we are seeing. So essentially, the report asks newsrooms around the world what they're thinking about AI, how they're using it, are they scared of it, and what their worries are, etc. And you've shared some of sort of the findings there. And so for me, that's the exciting part of the work that we do, because that's probably the only other time when we get to speak to journalists outside of the trainings that we do. And so one of the key things that comes out of this report all the time, and I guess this time around as well, is the need for teaching. The need for teaching, the need for collaboration, because like any other technology, journalists are always on the back end. And we're always rushing to figure out how do we use this, how do we implement it. And at Journalism AI, we are more optimistic. Amongst the hysteria, we're like, look, there's the good and the bad, but we try to focus on the good to teach journalists, newsrooms, how AI, ChatGPT can augment and supplement your work. It will not take your job, but it merely helps you do your work more efficiently, better, and possibly when it comes to language, as we can see, half are speaking Portuguese, half are speaking English. ChatGPT sort of helps in that sense. AI helps in that sense. And so we try to make sure that people understand that AI has been with us for the longest of time. It just so happens that ChatGPT was able to create a great UX interface that the normal user can play with and figure out how to use it for themselves. And we always go back to, when you're on Netflix and you watch a show and it recommends other shows, that's AI already. When you're looking at maps on Google Maps and you're walking somewhere, that's AI working in the background already. So in a sense, we try to give those basic examples to say, look, it has been there already, you were just not aware. But now that you're aware, come learn how it works, essentially.
Thank you, Tshepo. And building up from that a little bit and expanding on these challenges that I think you pose here on first, like what size a newsroom might have and be able, and that's one of the key maybe highlights that I already saw, like, is that like an ideal size of newsroom? Is that like an ideal beginning level for an individual that is going to maybe enter and be part of a newsroom that already has GPT as a policy for its work? I want to share this question between you guys. Like, obviously, you're not looking for the idea, but is there like a beginning for a newsroom to go through this digital transformation? And I'm calling digital because, we started with data visualization, big data, all these branding names that sound scary, but what you guys are talking here, for me, doesn't sound scary. So let's get back from you to the end of the table.
Cool. So for ChatGPT and AI, we try to work with the same sort of steps. And there is no size of where you start or how you start. And so really the first step is get some basic knowledge. Learn about the technology. Like Jonathan said, play on it, experiment with it. And that's what Sergio and them are doing on the fellowship, experimenting with various solutions for the project. Secondly, identify people who can take responsibility in the newsroom to harness this technology. So understand who are the people in your newsrooms, who are the techies, how can you bring both together to figure out what works for your newsroom and what doesn't. And so there isn't a one-size-fits-all. So it's key that you go through that together as a newsroom. Thirdly, explore various use cases. Read about what other people have done. And so on the Journalism AI website, journalismai.info, we have a case studies database where we have about 150 examples of AI use cases from around the world. So go on there, look at what other people have done, because essentially what you are trying to do has been done already. It's just a matter of you building from what's been done already. So the idea is not to always start from zero. The idea is to start from the work that other people have done already. The other thing is start small. It's key. Especially having worked with entrepreneurs back in South Africa, we always say start small. If you want to start a newsletter, sending it to 3 or 5 people. The same thing with AI, start small. Start with the basics and see where you go from there. Also the last 2 things, review what you're doing. It's important. Constantly review what you're doing because like Jonathan and Sergio mentioned, these are experimental platforms. They are not accurate. They hallucinate. So essentially, they will spew errors. And so you, on the other hand, and that's why he says the students can use it for their work, because at the end of the day, as a student or as the user, you need to be able to see the errors and the corrections in the work or in the AI. And lastly, think about the risks as well. That is key because we have platforms that have biases, etc. And so you need to be aware of those risks, of the errors as well, ethical risks as well. So it's important to keep that at the back of your mind as you play around with the technology.
Wonderful. So I'm going to tell you to not do the easiest thing. Don't do the simplest thing when it comes to using AI in the newsroom. Things like article summaries, things like article translation. The default thing that you will attempt to do is a lot of user-facing, reader-facing content creation. As was mentioned before, whenever Sina and Wired, they got very excited about generative AI, and they said, we're going to produce a ton of terrible, error-filled articles. And when you produce content that faces the reader, that has errors in it, which is something that GPT, these other large language models are prone to do, you get bitten, and then you stop using AI, or you're embarrassed to your boss, or it doesn't work out. It doesn't work out. The reason why I think it's great for my students to use it when they're working on projects is because it's facing them as users, not readers in the end. So I love the idea of AI editors. If you take a pitch, or if you take an article, or if you take anything, you can feed it into GPT and say, what do you think about this? Tell me ways in which my argument could be made better. Tell me ways in which this pitch could be made stronger. Tell me ways in which I could refine my tone, or make this sound more professional, or make this sound more casual, or anything like that. It is suggestions from the AI helping you to do your job. Tell me other people I might interview in order to make this story better. It's not going to invent quotes for you. If it tries to invent people, when you go to look for them, they won't be there, so that's very easy to solve that problem. But because it's facing you as the journalist, or you as the student, instead of a reader, there's an extra level of protection there against all of the errors that it loves to make. Because I think that the thing that made most people initially very excited about AI was image generation. So things like DALL-E, things like Midjourney, you can create this like beautiful art, or photorealistic images, and you were very excited, you're like, this is great. And then everyone shows up and they said, wait, all of these people have 6 fingers, or their arms are going backwards, and you're like, no, it's fine, because it just looks wonderful, and it's almost there. It's almost there, and because it is visual art, we're able to accept that imperfection. We're able to say this is not 100%, but because it's visual art, that's fine. For journalism, there is no room for error. The whole point of journalism is to be accurate and to be truthful. And if you make a mistake by relying on AI that starts spreading something that is less than truthful, all of your credibility goes out the window. It's always fun when students get very excited about GPT writing things like poetry or short stories about silly things. And it's the same as art, because if the short story is boring or some of the word choices are a little bit strange, you don't care because the story is there. But for journalism, again, the only thing that matters is being accurate. Most journalism stories are written pretty boring. There's a standard way that journalism is written. It's just there to convey information. And that is not something that, ChatGPT can do that. But yes, focus on things that make suggestions to you as the journalist, not things that focus onto your reader. It's a little bit safer, at least in the beginning. And in terms of size of newsroom, any size is okay as long as you have someone who takes responsibility and makes those edits. Because every newsroom that has a problem with AI pushed a bunch of content out, and they said, yeah, this was a person and a computer working together. But an editor never set eyes on those stories. An editor never fact-checked any of those things. They just said, looks fine enough, looks good to me, put it out there. So you really need someone who's going to say, this is my responsibility. I am going to treat the AI-generated content as if it were my own.
Thank you, Jonathan. Sergio, same question, and adding through what Jonathan just mentioned about responsibility, having someone in the newsroom. Is it like that at Núcleo? Can you mention a little bit?
Sim. A gente tem muito cuidado lá. A gente não gera conteúdo com inteligência artificial. Mas antes de eu falar disso,
Generated content.
assim,
But before I go into that, it's amazing to listen to my colleagues here. And I fully agree, mostly with responsibility, but also with what Tshepo said about, take it slowly, step by step. You don't have to rush into it. Having said that, I have 3 tips. First, are you listening to this, folks? I don't believe I'm going to say that, but I see people falling on the trap the whole time. Don't believe in what AI is telling you. Don't take it for its face value. Just don't believe in it. It might be true. It might be true. It's like fake news websites. Sometimes they publish stuff that is hardly connected to reality, but don't trust it. And now I'm moving away from journalism, People who are selling GPT prompt courses to set up investment portfolios. This is, these people should go to jail, in my opinion, because people can lose a lot of money by doing that. And ChatGPT was trained last time in 2021. It has data. How can you set up an investment portfolio based on what ChatGPT says now? And even if data was updated, don't do that. So as journalists, you can ask, who's the president of the US? And it might give you the right answer. But, check it. Check it. Don't believe immediately what it says. Its real usefulness is, adding to what Jonathan said, is to improve what you are already doing. That's my tip number 2. You have a long copy, for instance. And you say, can you leave it 15% smaller and using less adjectives, for instance? It'll do that, and then you'll review it. And then you say, well, it does look better. Sometimes it looks worse, but oftentimes it does look better. So again, it's a tool. It's not going to give you truthful information. It's processing a lot of text. And there's a probability model, and we don't even know how it works. Even the people who made it apparently don't know exactly how it works. But it gives you a sequence of words. And we have to bear that in mind when we use it. And if you want to do schoolwork, and if you want to copy-paste, even if your teacher or professor believes in it, there might be a lot of wrong information. I've seen it happen. There was a lawyer in the US who wrote a petition asking for jurisprudence on, asked for ChatGPT for a jurisprudence, and ChatGPT made it all up. And the lawyer was embarrassed in front of the judge. It was a lawyer with 40 years of practice, of law practice. So, be responsible about it. Even for stuff that seems harmless, like cooking recipes. Okay, great. It's gonna be very creative, but still, check it out, verify it somehow. Third tip, and this is coming from my own experience. I'm not a programmer. I'm a journalist who programs or who writes code. So I don't have such easiness on working with code like Jonathan. But one day, I was trying to crack a problem with data, and it was really boring. And I wasted hours doing that. And I said, I'm paying $20 a month for a ChatGPT. I'm going to ask it to do that. And it solved it right away. So that's the other tip. Use it to learn how to code, or to make coding more connected to what you do. Some people don't want to do that. They don't want to go there. But if you're trying, and if you're facing difficulties, ChatGPT can help you with that. So these are my 3 tips. And, I back what my 2 colleagues here said. That's what we can do in everyday life. Se eu puder acrescentar rapidamente ao que ele falou, teve uma conferência, eu não participei, tá? Mas eu vi no Twitter essa conferência.
An executive editor of the New York Times was saying currently generative AI is more effort than it is worth because of the amount of fact-checking that has to go into everything that it produces. Because there's just so much of a potential for it to say something that is wrong that you do have to edit. And they're just like, right now, it's a headache and it's not, paying for itself in terms of time.
Thank you, Jonathan, for adding that. Então, vou falar em português, me dirigindo a vocês, que...
and the benefit of the audience. And I want to recommend a text that was published by The New Yorker. Sci-fi writer Ted Chiang wrote it. And he compares AI and the hype around it. There's a series of stories in The New Yorker. And he compares AI to these consultancies like McKinsey and the like, Accenture and so on. And, it's about looking at the relationship between work, optimizing time, and how journalists, or, this task, it is first a task in the hands of journalists. And this in itself helps you identify in what part of the process this tool can optimize your time so that your time can then be used for a part of the research process where creativity or human aspects are negotiable. And I wanted to draw this connection with ethics and responsibility, because these are principles, connected to transparency, so that AI can be trustworthy before we even think of putting it in front of the reader or the audience. So first, as Jonathan said, let's think about how it can help us, and not how it's going to sound for readers or look for readers or for people who will be in contact with the final product. So there are challenges for investigative journalism or data visualization, and I think that they intertwine somehow. We have to discuss intellectual property, and this is already happening, actually. There's real discussion about IP. And I wanted to open for the audience as well, because I don't want to be the only one with this privilege. I see a full room here, and we can maybe have a round of 3 questions in a row. And, it's an open floor for you to take advantage of the time with our speakers. So we can begin with, and we have here some people who will circulate microphones around the room. So let's have 3 questions first. And I kindly ask you to self-describe before you ask your questions. We have someone here with a raised hand and one in the back. Okay, let's begin. Okay, so we start here in front. Please, your name and self-description. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Elisa. I am a brown girl. I'm wearing a white shirt and big ring earrings, and I hope this is enough of a description. So I wrote down some key questions that are in my mind regarding this topic. And I wanted actually to provoke you to provoke me, so that we can think about this together, because this is still sort of blurred in my mind, and maybe for other people as well. What we produce is information, and we share information, but it's also goods. We produce goods. And we live in a context in which society is determined by profit. And you said it yourself, you talked about this trend in the market, and the market directly connected to people who lead this market or who head it. There's this question about whether the role of journalists is replaceable by AI. I understand that we are now in a reality in which profits come before quality. So obtaining profit, in my perspective, comes before quality in most products. So sharing information falls within the same logic. So maybe we could have a debate about the quality of information, but that might not be enough to save our jobs, because we still fall under the logic of AI, and AI is cheaper than a worker. And I'm a working class girl myself, and I have some difficulty in understanding that, because I think that, the value is not as central as it should be. Second question, I understand that this is going to become a requirement for journalists, having some knowledge of coding and AI, just like in any other profession. How can it transform or, add to the elitism in our market? In 2015 or 17, there was a Mozilla survey saying that over 50% of Brazilians believe that internet is just Facebook. They don't see internet outside of Facebook. It's as if all the information we have is there. I believe that Brazil has skipped many stages in, coming closer to this digital world. Many people didn't even have a computer, a device that has access to internet, so they moved from zero autonomy and using internet to a smartphone in their hands. So there is a gap. Having a smartphone even before they had an access to a computer. So there was a lack of literacy in the literacy process, how to deal with internet, how to deal with technology. So that's my second question. I don't believe that quality is enough to save our jobs as an argument. I do understand the risks, and I'm concerned about the risks of, turning this into a more elite market than what we already have today in Brazil. That's it. Thank you. And then we have a microphone in the back for a question or a comment. Hello, good afternoon. My name is Eduardo. I'm 28. I have dark short hair, black t-shirt, black trousers, black sneakers. I like black. My question is about ChatGPT and ourselves as journalists. Jonathan gave the example of the cookie recipe. Maybe ChatGPT cannot give a new perspective on that. But I'm wondering if we can push the boundaries by asking the right questions. ChatGPT, can you give me a new take on a cookie recipe? How can we think about pushing the boundaries by asking the right questions? Thank you. Eu vou começar com o Jonathan, porque a gente teve uma conversa antes do painel.
This question of concentration of wealth, and also like precarization of labor, that is already part of the reality of what we in Brazil can call micro workers in different levels, right? And obviously in the level of information, we have here like content moderators, like people training GPT. But in this specific case, I'm feeling the question, like the urge to listen that, this difference of the business of journalism and how those tools are obviously in another layer of issues. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's an excellent question, and it's something that I care a lot about because I train all of these students and I send them out into the world, and I want them to have good jobs and be protected. It is absolutely an issue, absolutely a problem, absolutely something to be worried about. But on the other hand, there isn't just one media organization that everyone has to work to, right? In the US right now, we have an issue with private equity firms, which just buy up a bunch of smaller, maybe local newspapers, and then they just try to basically take all the money away from them. They're the ones that would love to use AI. The parent company of CNET, I guess, Red Ventures, they were the ones that were producing a lot of the terrible AI-generated content. But luckily, there are also a lot of news organizations that do care about producing news, and they do care about working hard and producing excellent journalism. A lot of my students that are doing their best work from a technical perspective are actually working in small nonprofit newsrooms. So we've talked a lot about the scale that is necessary for integrating AI into your workflow. And you might assume in order to use technology, it needs to be one of these big media conglomerates, one of these big companies. But it's not true. These smaller organizations can carve out niches for specific communities or certain topics, or just they are not in it for the money in the same way that other organizations might be. So I think the issue with everything in the world right now is, yes, there's someone trying to pull money from you in every direction, but luckily there are organizations where that is not the case. And so no, this is not the answer that AI will somehow pull us into a golden era where everything is wonderful and amazing. But as long as we can still hope that there are organizations that are dedicated to the act of journalism, I think we can rest assured that there will always be a place. And to go to the second part of the question too, about data being a necessary skill, I actually think that data is far less necessary than other people do. I teach data as my job. My official job title is Knight Chair in Data Journalism. But the thing that is most important in that title is the word journalism. The students who I have who get amazing, amazing technical skills, the ones who can't write, can't report, can't figure out what an interesting story is, they don't get jobs. They don't get jobs. If you have someone who is a good journalist, who has a nose for news, who can write a story, who has a little bit of technical skills, 99 times out of 100, they are the ones that will be employed instead of the person with fancy data analysis and fancy data visualization skills. So if the tech stuff is hard, if the tech stuff is intimidating, if you feel like you need it, or else you're never going to get a job, not true at all. It's the journalism that's the heart of all of this.
Good news, okay. And good news also that we have Sergio here that has one of these newsrooms that, I don't know, do you have a job? Do you have a...
I have too much of a job. Esqueci seu nome, desculpa.
Your name once again?
Elisa.
Elisa, your question is very interesting. Of course, you're looking from a profit perspective, but we can look at it from a different perspective. We're going to have outlets with or without AI that will want to sell their product regardless. From my perspective, we have to look at quality. Do you want to have quality product, or do you want ChatGPT to produce a lot of text just to give you volume? It might work, but it's going to be low quality. And journalism is terrible business. You know, if you want to make money, I love journalism. We have an organization with 15 people. So 15 people are employed, myself and my partners. It's very difficult to employ 15 people, but you know, we protect quality. We sell technologies, we have subscriptions. Just yesterday, someone asked me, what's your business model? And I said, all of them. We just don't sell journalism. You know, we don't sell stories. We make investigation to talk about what's going on with big techs and what's their impact. So quality for us is key. Our stories go through 3-4 edition processes. And many web portals, you know, a trainee will publish directly, and with all due respect to trainees, by the way, but we verify and check all the information, and sometimes there are grammar errors. We very rarely correct information because, you know, if we cannot fact check it, we remove it, and if it's really important, we try to confirm it. So using AI and AI taking away jobs, I don't think that's the point. If you want to have quality products, and if you want to do quality journalism, we have very low audience, but we have been mentioned in Senate inquiry committees. We've helped the police uncover child pornography groups. So our focus is quality, and we do cause an impact. Okay, you can talk about money and profit. It's going to be there. You know, there's no way around it. We accept grants from big techs, from Google, although they give no opinion whatsoever on what we do. But we do accept it because we believe that they have the duty to fund the stuff that we do to make them accountable. So we have to think from a quality perspective. If you want quality, we need people. You know, you can't go around this. AI, at least the current AI that we have, and I don't believe in the near future we're going to have an AI that's capable of doing journalism investigation the level a human being does, you know, understanding nuances, fact-checking, identifying terms, and even data analysis, which you can automate. But there are some things in the data analysis process in which you need context, you need to know jargon, you need to know slang that appears in the data. So if you do repetitive, exhausting work, maybe these people should be concerned or they should be updated. I was just talking to a guy who worked for Agência Brasil, a news agency, and he was doing repetitive work there. He wrote stories with a template, and he hated it. And he was a civil servant, and he decided to do something else. Now he's doing amazing newsletters. Eduardo Goulart Andrade, maybe he's here even. He's a great guy. So he decided to update a study, and he knew he could be replaced in his previous job. So focus on quality, because I think that's the future, and AI will help you get there.
Just to add, AI might not even be the solution. You might not even need AI. And so you've got to look at yourself as a journalist and figure out whether you need it or not. The same way newsrooms had to figure out whether to use TikTok or not for the newsrooms. A lot of newsrooms ended up not using TikTok because they just couldn't figure out how to reach young people or how to supplement their content for TikTok. And so that's where you have to figure out whether this works for you or not. When it comes to elitism in journalism, it'll always be there. And the beauty of, at least at Journalism AI and in my past experience with working with small newsrooms, is that you get to work with newsrooms who are working in niche segments, who are focusing on particular niches or topics, and they do that very well. And that's where you will find the quality. They're not concerned about making big bucks or, you know, making huge amounts of money. All they care about is quality journalism, and that's where a lot of people are going. Look for those small publications that are doing the good work. In terms of asking the right type of questions to ChatGPT, it's a difficult one because ChatGPT is not a search engine. And so obviously the answers you'll get will always be different, or it'll create answers, as we've seen. But there are organizations who are using the data they have already to produce work, and in that way they trust the data, and they would be able to ask creative questions to come up with creative content. And I think that's where we should look to for examples and for direction, rather than focusing on this behemoth that's OpenAI, where one, you don't know where the data is coming from, you don't know whether it's true or not, the risks that come with the data. So, like my colleagues here have said, double check, triple check all the content, all the information, all the time.
Thank you, Tshepo. I wanted to connect a little bit of the conversation because in the back we had what I think was a question of creativity. And what I sense is do you see like this is where humanity is acting on to actually put the work where never is going to happen. Any automation or any kind of recommendation system would be able to identify where creativity is in a project or in a pitch. I want to take like the lead here to suggest this question because it seems like it's where a lot of these conversations go like, well, no, GPT doesn't have any creativity. And since he mentioned the cookie recipe, it's up to you, Jonathan, to lead the creativity part.
All right. The thing here is we love GPT as journalists because it will automate away the boring stuff. The stuff that we want to do, it'll fill in those templates for us. It will do the things, we don't like to do the same thing again and again and again as human beings. We're not good at it. It makes us bored, it makes us distracted. What we are good at is being creative. And so what you're trying to do is just let GPT do the stuff that GPT is good at. Computers love to do boring tasks. They're not going to complain. Just relax and say, focus on what you're good at, and I'll focus on what I'm good at, which is the creativity. I think that for a lot of the, I don't know, there's a big debate right now in the AI art community, and I guess art in general, about whether the idea of providing a prompt to an image model like DALL-E or Midjourney counts as creativity, counts as artistic expression. And creativity is something you can get in arguments about. It's something you can fight about. I don't think there's one right or wrong answer, and if there is, I don't know what it is. But yeah, I think that you can coax something that seems like creativity out of GPT. It might make you think of angles you hadn't thought of or think of directions you hadn't thought of. But that is all fighting uphill. That is just much more difficult for these machines than they are for us.
Thank you for that. Pessoal, temos mais uma possibilidade de rodada.
We have a possibility of a next round of questions. I see one question over here, right at the back, and over here to my left. Hi, my name is Alexandre. Here. I am a white man with brown hair, beard, and tattoos on my arms. And I'm wearing a white T-shirt saying, I only trust the facts. Can you stand up, Alexandre? Sure. My question is, new technologies as AI give possibilities of new entrants to markets. But even so, OpenAI is controlled by Microsoft. 10 years ago, when platforms were growing a lot, the regulatory choice was to have minimum possible regulation. And I noticed that most countries regret this choice, and they are debating that. Today, there are certain debates on the regulation of AI. And here in Brazil, the large companies defend some kind of sectorial regulation, general law that would give some kind of guideline in each industry. So, for example, the health surveillance agency would regulate these aspects regarding the health company. I'd like you to know the large companies, the possibility of having new entrants, and the relation of that with regulation, the regulatory choices countries will make regarding AI. Thank you, Alexandre. We have a person on the left, and there's a person here to the right. Hi, how are you doing? I'm Emmanuel. I'm a white, blonde woman, 36. I'm wearing a khaki shirt, a white jacket, and black shirt. I became a journalist in 2009, so there was no AI as we have today available to us so easily. And currently, I use ChatGPT a lot, and I feel as if the text is not only mine. This is why I wanted to know the opinion of the professors and also Sergio's. I don't know how to put that. Oh, it's only giving you an idea, because we do not copy it. We cannot, as Sergio said, and other speakers as well. But I feel that. I don't know if it can be my feeling, because I'm a noted journalist, but if there is something that we should actually put here, as part of those ideas came from AI. I don't know how to behave regarding using my work as a professional journalist, 100% myself, and the use of ChatGPT. Thank you, Emanuele. Last question. I think it's José man, a bit overweight, gray hair, and red glasses. I'd like to ask each one of the speakers to give one example of a good example, an interesting example, or a disaster, or a curious case in the use of AI in journalism that is worthwhile for us to research. Thank you. Good morning. Good afternoon. My name is Gabriel. I am a fag. I am all in white because it's a day of Shashala. And my question is whether there is a new concept that is being very much used and studied and expanded on racism, the algorithm racism, how the structure also reproduces these speeches that are prejudiced. I'd like to understand whether AI somehow, if there is anything that blocks that, if it's thinking about alternatives for non-dissemination of hate speech on those platforms, if you have any concrete examples of that. Thank you. Gabriel. Let's go to the last question at the back. Good afternoon. I'm in Altino Machado. I'm from Acre State in the northwest of Brazil. I am 60 years old. I am a mixture of white people, black people, indigenous people. I am brown. I'm wearing gray pants, black jacket. I'd like to ask a question, which is the following. I am a journalist, self-taught journalist. Of these 60, I've been working for 40 years as a professional journalist. I'd like to know, well, in academia, professors are able to identify that the student has done the capstone project, copied, and cheated, or copy and pasted. And also in a master's degree and a PhD, academia in the whole world have apps for that. We've already seen certain tragedies of journalists having as a source Wikipedia. I don't know, ChatGPT is an evolution of it as well. So I'd like to know whether there are already tools that are able to identify that text or story has been produced, and in what scale has it been produced using AI. And the other thing is, from the panel, who can recommend or indicate the best app for us to record an interview, Q&A, and insert what has been recorded? Altino, thank you. Altino, great reference of northern journalism in Brazil. We have algorithmic racism. We have José Toledo with examples. Here, it would be cool for us to leave here with certain examples for everybody to look up. Emanuele, I liked your question. Well, after all, how can we keep this relationship without going into certain controversies, monogamic or non-monogamic with ChatGPT, and Alexander regulating AI that in Brazil is moving forward. We have one regulation in the European Union. I don't know if Tshepo can contribute. I don't know. What about the US? I think the regulation topic is important for the panel. I think those would be the final remarks of this panel that has been very gratifying to moderate, at the same time contributing with people that I already know and seeing people that I know in the audience. So I'll let you be free, and recognizing the importance of everyone that has been contributing with questions to guide our debate so that we can accomplish our goal here of leaving here optimistically. So we had a ChatGPT can talk to you, joking. No, it's a lie. It's not there. Okay, Tshepo, para você. Se você quiser falar pouquinho sobre cada uma dessas
questions and wrap up our session today. These are our last remarks. We have many different, questions, and I think those questions that we are going to maybe finish our panel today are really important for the Brazilian audience. Thank you.
Cool. One, I never want to recommend an app because there's so many. But what I'll tell you is when you go to partnerships on AI, they have a database of tools that journalists can download, and you can figure out what tools you want. They give the prices, how difficult it is. You can find it there. What I use is OtterAI to record interviews on Zoom, on Google Meet. So that works for me. It's not accurate, and it's not great with languages that are not English. And so that's where the difficulty comes in with AI at this point in time, that it's not good with languages that are not English. Two examples of good or bad AI that we've seen. One, I'll say we've got a workshop on Sunday. I'll do an introductory session and give a couple examples, but I'll give one that really worked well on one of our programs. So the Guardian newspaper and AFP worked on a project where they used a large language model where they wanted to figure out whether, for example, a politician was lying. So they would check a quote they say today with a quote they said 3 months ago. And they would search their database to check what they said today and what they said before. And then through this language model, they figured that out. But what this platform also did was it showed them that they were quoting more men than women in the publication, and so they changed the types of sources they got. And through that model, they also came across that all the science experts that they quote in the publications were all male. And so they were able to change that through using that for language model in their newsrooms. But I'll give more examples on Sunday at 9:30, come through. I'll let my colleagues to answer our questions.
All right, so the two questions about, the one about do you have to credit GPT, I think it's fascinating because if you're writing in Google Docs and it spell checks you and it says you spelled that wrong, or you should rephrase that, do you end up saying, oh, Google Docs told me I spelled this wrong and here's my correction, right? And so there's a spectrum from tiny suggestions about specific words to where it auto-completes the thank you, here, yes, that time is okay, kind of basic email, to it writing everything for you. And I think that there is so much of what we write is actually not unique. It is not interesting. It is simply us using the most basic normal phrases to convey an interesting bit of information or an interesting fact. And so I don't think anyone agrees with me ever, but I believe that the information is more important than the way it is written, which is why GPT, it's a robot, who cares, And so I don't think that you need to cite these things. The difficulty is if you are a professor and you have to tell your students, cite all of this, I'm going to run this through detection algorithms. They don't work. They don't work. What those GPT detectors look for is boring, normal language, which GPT will create normal, boring language, but you could also feed it something and say, make this sound less like a robot wrote it. And then it will pass the test of being written by a human. So I think that for instructors to rely on these tools is bad, because the worst thing about AI is people trust it. We talked before about the facts that come out of AI are not facts. It is not a search engine. It is not a knowledge base. If the AI says someone plagiarized this, someone had GPT write this, even if you think, oh no, this is a good student, they wouldn't do that, you will still believe a robot that told you that someone cheated, even if you know it's not true. We have a lot of problems with this in the police in the US. For the regulation piece, it's a very interesting question, because when a company gets a lot of market share, they then build regulation into the system so there cannot be more entrants into the system. I think the solution to everything is to make data a liability. The reason why everything bad happens in technology is because companies have too much data. They're not scared of collecting more data. If there was a reason for them to say, no, maybe we shouldn't scrape everything on the internet, or no, maybe we shouldn't collect everyone's healthcare data, then we would probably be in a better place. And for the racism thing, there's actually a really interesting paper that I think came out yesterday, 2 days ago, from Anthropic AI. And it is an analysis of value judgments from generative language models. And so what they did was they went around the world and they asked like political questions, like how important is it to be a democratic society or have free speech or things like that. If you ask in different countries, surprise, they give you different answers. But if you ask AI again and again, it always gives you the same answer. It always says freedom of speech is great, democracy is great, here are the specific great things. So it's very much a reflection of whoever is sourcing the data. And prior to reading that paper, I always felt like images were the trouble when it comes to racist behavior, because you'd say, there's a piece that was in Bloomberg a few weeks ago about stable diffusion generated images, reinforcing stereotypes. And yes, it's bad in images, it's bad in text. What can we do but be careful and encourage, responsible usage, perhaps disclosure. And for good examples, I have 2 websites that you can go to. One is investigate.ai, that's more traditional machine learning with a lot of Python. The other one is normalai.org, and that is a little bit more of the newer technology stuff. I think that's all of the questions.
Vou começar pela do Toledo ali.
With Toledo's question. There are several examples from everyday work, but I'm truly obsessed by Artifact. It's an app. I don't know if you've heard about it. AI used for curating news. It was created by Eduardo Saverin, who's one of the original founders of Facebook. It's an amazing app. So you say what you want to read. We believe social media delivers what we want, but it delivers what we don't want. Just take Twitter as an example. And this app gives me exactly what I want to read and what I need to read. So I selected a couple of sources, and after my reading app, or my reading habits, it makes recommendation, and it says, do you like this? No. So the AI rewrites the headline of the article so that it doesn't become a clickbait. And you can actually report stories. You can say this is fake news. It's an amazing app. It's called Artifact, only in English. It has, sources in English for the time being, Guardian and so forth, but it's a great app. It even shows you how many times and I've been opening it for 63 days in a row. It's amazing. Everything I want to read seems to be there. There's a summary made by AI. So if it's a long, actually, they summarize the stories, and it's summarized by AI. Regarding regulation, as to Aragon's question, I don't think it's really clear how regulation is going to pan out, even in, or at least in Brazil. I know there's discussion in Europe, but I don't think it's clear. We are requiring regulation. There's talk about it in Brazil, but it's so new that we don't know. We don't know what's going to come out of that. Microsoft does not control OpenAI, just as a correction. OpenAI is a non-profit, and they created a company to sell their services. So one does the research, the non-profit. Microsoft acquired 49% of the company. And they are competitors, OpenAI and Microsoft. I was reading on Artifact, actually, a story about this. There are several fights between them because they are competitors. Regarding bias of the AI algorithm, I'm not an expert in this topic, but a Google researcher was fired, I believe, 3 years ago, because she wrote a paper, an academic paper, you know, university paper, talking about the biases on AI. That AI that was being developed by Google. And Google is a pioneer. Maybe they don't have the best product now, but Google did create a lot of tools that are being created. And she was fired because she wanted to publish that work. So, yes, there are bias. They are trained on many data and texts that are inherently racist. Microsoft launched a Twitter bot recently with AI to talk to users through tweets. And one day, someone was praising Hitler and telling everyone to fuck off. This AI. It's a true story. You can research it. So when information is low quality, that's the information that's used to train the AI. ChatGPT is trained through Reddit also. And there's a lot of great stuff there. But there's terrible stuff there, you know, misogyny, there's prejudice there. So when it's trained with this huge amount of data, it's very hard that you're not going to have, you know, biases. And as to her question, well, you know, to beat ChatGPT, just talk to it as if it was a regular conversation until you understand its limitations, what it can and cannot do. Sometimes I chat about beer with ChatGPT. Sunday morning, I was in bed. I didn't want to go out, and I'm, you know, fed up of social media. Okay, let me see how far this conversation goes. And I asked about beer, and I like this type of beer. What type of beer do you like? I cannot say that, it says, because I'm a model, and I insisted to see how far it went. And he says, well, I would choose a Belgian IPA because it's very well ranked. So talk to it, not to make it human, but to understand its limits and how useful it can be to you. That's it. Folks, just as a suggestion, if you're interested in this topic, the impact of AI and of language models and of, you know, generative AI, at the Mozilla Foundation, we have an open source investigation department, and I highly recommend it. And we develop a lot of auditing work. Tshepo is the researcher who works for Google, and now she heads there. It's an institute that specializes in how to turn AI into a fairer tool. The reference in Brazil for that area, racism and algorithms, is Tarcísio Silva, who talks a lot about legislation and regulation of AI in Brazil and the lack of social participation in this process of developing legislation. Most of all, the lack of participation of Black people in this process to elaborate this legislation. This is what we had now is just a flavor of what we're going to have on our Sunday with Data with Jonathan and Tshepo. So please come to this presentation on Sunday as well. And again, get your IDs back and give back the headsets, the interpretation headsets. Thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of the Congress.